Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Karush Saraf. I'm the Vice President of Product Management. I'll be co-presenting this with my esteemed colleague, Pradeep Singh. He's Vice President of Global IT Infrastructure at Palo Alto. So you noticed yesterday we launched our SD-WAN, and Nir and Lee did a fantastic job setting up the problem and also talk about our SD-WAN solution. What we are going to do here today is talk about some of those details, but also the top question on everybody's mind is, what is the difference between Palo Alto SD-WAN solution with other SD-WAN solutions? So we're going to actually talk about that as well. In fact, that's one of the core takeaways out of this session. So before we dive in, maybe a show of hands of how many people have an SD-WAN project as a top 3 project on their list in a POC deployed. I assume all the hands should go up because you're in an SD-WAN session. No, not a lot of hands. OK, maybe you're in the wrong session. So out of everybody that has tried the SD-WAN, anybody in the POC with SD-WAN? And how many people think it's pretty simple and it's going very smooth? OK, no hands. Good. One. Perfect. All right, so we're going to be going through this and talk about SD-WAN, some of the challenges that I've seen people face with, why we are doing SD-WAN as a company, and Pradeep is going to talk about our own SD-WAN implementation and some of those challenges. There's also this golden ticket that most of you are familiar with for questions. At the end, the best question, I'm supposed to give this golden ticket to, so you can win a car or some other prize. All right, so let's talk about what's driving SD-WAN, right? We've been hearing this move to the cloud consistently. Apps are moving to the cloud either as SaaS or platforms as a service, corporate workloads. These apps need high performance connectivity and reliability. And private connectivity like MPLS has limitations. And we're going to talk about those details of what those limitations are. Now, SD-WAN comes in to solve those problems. So SD-WAN improves user experience. It increases bandwidth. It increases flexibility and agility. And from the customers I've spoken with, everybody actually mentions one of these areas. And most likely, it's one of your items of thought as well. Now, the challenges are that there is going to be new security risks. There is unreliable performance and increased complexity, right? And I have examples to show you why those challenges exist in SD-WAN. So it all sounds like SD-WAN is going to solve a problem, but it actually introduces a lot more problems into your network. And part of this session is awareness of what really happens when you deploy SD-WAN. So the first part is that prior to introducing SD-WAN, connectivity is easy, security is easy. All the branches are connected together over some private interconnect. What happened here? The traffic will go through a firewall that you've deployed at the data center. And with cloud, the traffic now has to go hairpin back out and reach the network. But still, this is secure. Everything is connected, and life is easy. Once you introduce SD-WAN, you've introduced additional links, broadband links at the branch location. The branch is now exposed to the internet, right? So the security challenge is that that new device that you've added at the branch needs to be robust as far as its own functionality. But also SD-WAN now forces security close to the branch, because that firewall that we've had on the data center is no longer in path of the traffic. That's how SD-WAN improves performance, is by sending traffic direct to the cloud. But now security comes into the picture. And Palo Alto has been involved in SD-WAN projects for a number of years with partner SD-WAN companies to provide that security close to the edge, either as a firewall or a VM, or with Prisma Access. They both sit in the path of the traffic, right? So the first challenge is that security is part of an SD-WAN deployment. And many companies that I've spoken with, they get stuck in the networking team doing an SD-WAN project. By the time they go to deploy it, the security team comes in and says, wait a minute, this actually is not up to par anymore. Our security posture has regressed. And now you need to come back and introduce a security solution. And if a customer is a Palo Alto customer, they would want Palo Alto at the edge of the network as well. Now, with a Palo Alto solution, the reason people ask for it is that you get that consistency of security. So all the policies you've configured that you used to use before for branch traffic, you get to paint on the branch portion as well. These are the methods that Palo Alto and SD-WAN have been deployed together. So these are all with partner SD-WAN products. Either put our 2 boxes next to each other. Now, if you're doing HA, you now have 4 boxes that need to be connected. Company like VeloCloud, for instance, or Versa now run our VM on their platform, but you still have disjointed management. Number 3 is with a UCP. So what happens is that because of that complexity of management, our customers go to a managed service provider or a carrier and say, put these VMs on a universal CPE such that management becomes easy, and they buy it as a service, but it still is 2 or 3 different boxes, and it also becomes expensive. Number 4 has been pretty popular. This is where you have the lowest number of boxes. You got the SD-WAN partners, such as CloudGenix or Silver Peak, and all the traffic goes to Prisma Access. So you get SD-WAN with security from Palo Alto. All of these have been in play. They've been selling. The ask has always been that we want you to put SD-WAN in your box. And that's what we've done, and that's what we've announced at Ignite. So prior to today, did you guys know about SD-WAN? Was this a well-kept secret, or did you guys all know about? Show of hands, who knew for SD-WAN prior to today? OK, almost half the people. Wow. OK, not a well-kept secret, but that's all right. So I'm going to be talking about the details of number 5. We're going to obviously support our partnerships as well so that all of Palo Alto customers get to use Palo Alto security as well. Now, challenges, right? So some SD-WAN solutions want you to connect all the offices to each other. This is the mesh connectivity that you see from some vendors. What happens here is that it's obviously easy to put these boxes, but then a bunch of chaos happens in the middle where you don't really know how the traffic comes from one part of the globe to another part of the globe. So you have a scalability challenge in this kind of architecture. There is internet congestion that kind of comes in once in a while, and a Zoom call can't go through, so the traffic troubleshooting for IT becomes difficult. And then the other aspect is you see what's going on, but you can't do anything about it, right? There's nothing. If internet is congested, it's congested. You really don't have a way out of this situation because you don't control the middle portion of this topology. The other way, so once people do that, then they realize, OK, that wasn't very good. I should go into this hub and spoke scalable model where I put these regional hubs. I get high quality bandwidth between my hubs, and it makes life easier. This is generally the recommended topology that everybody ends up with at the end of the day. It scales. It's easy to troubleshoot, and it's easy to get your hands around. In fact, we recommend the same architecture. The challenge is that you're doing this yourself. So as a do-it-yourself solution, you need to have enough IT staff to be able to host the hubs in those regional locations, buy the interconnect, and operate this. So many companies that have the IT staff will actually deploy the hub and spoke because there is really, frankly, no other solution available other than going to a service provider. Now, I mentioned this middle mile portion. And so one of the pieces that I wanted to show is that when you connect a branch to a single network provider, there are obviously multiple routers in the middle, and then there's also domains that the traffic has to go through. So you can get congestion on that first mile coming up between 2 ISPs. So if you're actually traversing, let's say, a country, or even 2 different carriers, one is on LTE, one is on cable, you have these peering point congestions. And you can also have congestion inside of a carrier. So that's why people add a second ISP, and SD-WAN was born, right? You can pick between the right ISP depending on the quality of that first mile link. But you still haven't solved the problem in the middle of those ISPs. So you still have picked one of those 2, but the rest of the challenges are still there. That's where what's called middle mile comes in. So from an ISP, you would want to also control the middle of the network as well. And that middle can connect your branch offices together, or it can connect directly to SaaS. And this is actually a a platform, for instance, that you can go and buy from Equinix and deploy the hubs there and, and pay for that as well. So at the end of the day, SD-WAN needs to be edge to edge, from branch to the middle to the last mile. And that's really the architecture that most people don't think about because it's not something that the vendors really sell. You end up piecing it together yourself. So I'm basically sharing that the journey that most people go through is that they want to get to this type of a end-to-end, but it's difficult and also can be operationally expensive. Now, Pradeep is going to talk about our own experience, and then I'm going to come back up and talk about the solution that we have at Palo Alto in our next generation of software. Pradeep?
Thank you, Koresh. Can you guys hear me? Mic check. Can you guys hear me in the back? All right, great. So I run the IT infrastructure team in Palo Alto Networks. So when all of this does not work, I'm the one who actually gets the call. So it's very important for me, my boss is sitting here, that these things work. Right? So we deployed our SD-WAN solution about a year ago. And it took us a good amount of time to do POCs, evaluate the network design, make sure that we do the right choices as far as the deployment model is concerned, and how our applications are going to perform there. After that, deployments are usually pretty simple once you have your playbook ready. But there's still a lot of planning which is needed to put these devices in line in your hub sites. Finally, earlier this year, we have started disconnecting our MPLS circuits. And we are primarily on point-to-point and DIA circuits in most of our sites. So our architecture is essentially a bookend model. Our branch sites exit directly out on the internet. And our data center has SD-WAN controllers which are offline. In fact, they're out of band from the path. This is a very interesting design because all of our VPN tunnels terminate in the data center. And we wanted to make sure that in case something happens to SD-WAN devices, we do not lose connectivity between our branch and data centers. Now, we have a hybrid network of MPLS and P2P and some of the and DIA circuits. And since we have 50% of our apps in the cloud, we needed to make sure that the branches actually exit directly. And with our firewall at each site and SD-WAN controllers, it is possible to do that with the same security posture we had before. Now, double-clicking a little bit into our global deployment, we have a combination of hub and spoke model, and some of the smaller sites connect to more than one hub. And here is a little more detail on how this works. So on the data center side, you can see the SD-WAN sits on the side, and our firewalls are our routers. So SD-WAN actually monitors the links between the two sites, P2P and over IPsec tunnels. And it actually pushes the routes in the firewall on which path to take. It is done dynamically. It is based on the QoS policies we have defined. And it takes into account all the latency and jitter. On the branch side, all the SD-WAN traffic is inline. And it actually exits, for internet, it exits directly. And coming back to the data center, it goes over the same links as P2P and MPLS. Now, not all branch sites have MPLS, so most of our smaller sites are just internet only. Now, some of the benefits which Koresh talked about, we actually saw them almost immediately. So as soon as we put SD-WAN in, we had a lot of visibility into the sessions and the flows. We were actually able to tell our business that if a call drops, why did it happen and when did it happen, and which flow was used. Right? This visibility wasn't there before. We got a lot of benefits on uptime, especially in brownout situations, where we have call centers in India where internet connections are not very reliable. And in order to get that uptime, this was immediately a good solution. On the OpEx side, we do get some benefits in terms of reducing MPLS and such, but usually those investments are put back in bandwidth upgrades at sites. Right. And obviously, if the provisioning is simple, however, the deployments can get pretty complicated. But with the cloud model, where all the orchestration is done through the cloud, it actually is rather simple to manage an SD-WAN solution by itself. Now, here's all the good stuff, and now let's look at some of the surprises we got. Overall complexity actually went up. This was a surprise for us. Even in the POCs, we were expecting some of this. When you introduce these devices in a fashion where you have to pick up MPLS versus point-to-point versus DIA. Special routing considerations have to be taken in. You're already adding more devices, so the number of devices to manage and upgrade and secure obviously are more. And troubleshooting becomes harder. Now the network engineers have to work with multiple service providers. They have to work with different SLAs because there are different DIA circuits. So it's different from how they used to have it in MPLS, where they could just call a CenturyLink or a Verizon or AT&T. But the bigger question here is, are we losing any of the security posture we had at the branch? And this was one of the requirements where we engaged with our InfoSec team in the very beginning. And SD-WAN actually, you need to make sure that SD-WAN devices themselves are secured. Right? In a pure play SD-WAN model, a lot of the solutions which are out there in the market, they do not actually come with the deep functionality you need to secure a branch. A branch needs to be as secure, if not more, than your data center because it's the weakest link in the chain. And with the SD-WAN introduction, we noticed a specific use case here where before SD-WAN, we could tell our firewall which interface was trusted and which interface was not trusted. You could define your zones and policies based on the interfaces, and it was relatively easy to manage. But with the introduction of SD-WAN, all of the traffic which is north of the firewall is now untrusted. And now you have to take into account how are you going to split that traffic, how are you going to monitor that traffic. And because SD-WAN is encrypting all this traffic, we're able to see this because we have firewalls on both ends, which is the main reason you need to do a decryption on some of these traffic to make sure none of the malware actually traverses into your data centers. Now, if you're running VPN gateways in your branch sites, which we were, there were some special considerations to do. We are obviously moved away from that into a Prisma access model. But before this, we were running VPN gateways in 16 locations around the world. And when you have VPN gateways running, SD-WAN actually needs to be, a hole needs to be punched in to allow that traffic to come in. And that BGP routing is also pretty complicated to manage. It still does not eliminate any of the network staff you have. In fact, the network staff has to learn more about SD-WAN now, as well as the application performance requirements, because a lot of the network connectivity is now customized based on the application. So if I was to leave you with some simple takeaways today, SD-WAN is a pretty mature technology. It allows you to customize your network based on application connectivity requirements. It can modernize your WAN all the way from data center to branch to cloud to multi-cloud to hybrid cloud. But it needs to be done with a lot of careful selection. We had to make sure that we were transport agnostic. The form factors were as per our needs because we are also working in the cloud. And one of the things we noticed was self-service for dynamic path tuning. And this is important when you are tuning your SD-WAN solution for a site which has a lot more brownouts. So for instance, for us, in India, we had to tweak the latency and jitter settings to failover faster than we had to do it at other sites. And this was something we had to work with our provider to happen. We would rather have this ability ourselves to do. On the deployment side, the selection of the model and the design is critical. And InfoSec has to be involved to begin with, because this will change some of the security policies you have, and you will have to update them or revise them or add more things to it to make it to the same posture. Ongoing, this is not once set up and forget kind of a thing. There is constant tuning needed as your applications change. You have a bigger attack surface now because your branch is also egressing traffic out directly. So as that happens, this has to be closely monitored, as well as the SD-WAN devices themselves have to be closely secured so that if something was to happen to those devices, nobody can actually get into your data center. Now, before SD-WAN world, a lot of the routers and even our firewalls, they were all battle-hardened tested. It was pretty difficult to get into them. A lot of the SD-WAN solutions out there are actually white box labeled devices. And they are still coming up in terms of how battle-hardened they are. So please keep that in mind when you're selecting your SD-WAN solutions. And finally, invest in SD-WAN and application training for your network engineers. They will have to change the way they were doing WAN routing before. And they will have to get more involved in who is the user and how are they using it and where is it coming from and which cloud is it going to. And that's the only way to actually scale this properly. You will also need some runbooks to troubleshoot this, because troubleshooting is relatively difficult. It's not just pick up and go and hopefully you'll figure it out. You can have a full mesh or a hybrid mesh, and routing becomes extremely difficult in that case. That's all I had.
Thanks, Pradeep. All right, I actually have good news for you. We're going to solve all those problems. How about that? So this is that next section, right? So we saw a lot of this complexity. We talked about a lot of the bad stuff about SD-WAN, right? And this is actually why Palo Alto got into the SD-WAN. In fact, last Ignite, about 6 months ago in US, the audience was asking, why can't you guys just put this functionality in the firewall and be done with it, right? You don't have to have these 4 different boxes and just simplify life. I don't need to learn a new workflow. All these things that Pradeep just talked about, we would address if we really put this in our box. And that's actually what we've done. So if we take a look at our PanOS, it already does all of the hard functions of a SD-WAN. It does app decodes. It creates these overlay IPsec tunnels. It actually does a much better job at app decodes because we do a custom app decodes. So a lot of our large customers actually use our app decodes in front of SD-WAN to do custom apps and other types of high-quality decodes prior to sending it to a SD-WAN box. So what we had to add in was those capabilities that allow the box to measure the quality of the link, which is path selection and dynamic path change, and be able to react to brownout conditions. So the first one that is in the next version of PanOS, which is in beta right now, and it's going to be coming out towards the end of the year or early next year. We're still targeting the end of this year, is to collect path metrics. This is where we can send probes and detect the delay, jitter, and drop in a sub-second fashion and be able to react to brownout conditions. The second one is that we allow this on a per application basis. So if you have Zoom, you want to say, use any link that meets the service level requirements, that capability has been added into PanOS now. And the last piece that people attribute to SD-WAN is this dynamic path selection and avoiding brownouts. So in that example, if that was a Zoom call and one of the paths, the packets were going down one of the paths, and that path is no longer suitable, the traffic can move over to a second suitable path in a sub-second fashion, stay there until the call finishes, or we can move it back if you're running it on LTE to save the bytes. So we can dynamically move it to a good path or move it back when the original path recovers. So these features have been added to the next version of PanOS 9.1. The other piece is management. So we've integrated SD-WAN now in Panorama. This is same workflow, same management system that you're used to from a security perspective, now allows you to configure the service level requirements and apply them into specific applications and push them down to the boxes. So we've also added the capability of automatic hub and spoke topology creation. So you can say, these are my branches, these are my hubs, and it automatically tunnels everything together over all of the DIA circuits that you have. So we've tried to make life easier by automatically setting up these tunnels for you as well. The capability is available on existing shipping hardware as well as VM. So generally, people purchase the 220s, the 800 series, and 3200 series for the branch side, as well as VMs on x86. And on the hub locations, the larger boxes, which have the capacity to terminate the tunnels, is also used. So this feature is available on the boxes that are shipping today. The 7Ks are coming soon, as well as the VM50 and VM100 are also a little bit delayed because of, we want to make sure that the memory footprint is contained. But overall, if you already have these boxes, this is a software upgrade for you, or most of you guys are probably at that tail end of a refresh anyway to these boxes. The other capability that we've added in is zero-touch provisioning. So this is the case of having large number of branches, and you want to avoid a truck roll to that location. You can ship a brand new box via the courier of your choice. The box can be plugged into an internet link. The box finds its way back to our redirection service, and if it belongs to one of your accounts, we will redirect it to your Panorama instance. And from that point, you can just download the bootstrap policies, and off you go. So the boxes that will have this capability will have a suffix called ZTP at the end. That way, you'll know that when you order it or you find it in your inventory, this one has this out-of-box experience that is ZTP, so it doesn't get confused with the other boxes. All right, so let's put all this together with an example. So let's say we have this Zoom application, and we've added 2 DIA circuits to our MPLS link at the branch. So the first piece is that you don't need an extra SD-WAN hardware. It's in the next generation firewall, so that box would be gone. It's all in the PA 220 or 820 that you have at the branch edge. Let's say that you want a service level requirement that says as long as the loss is 0.2% and the delay and jitter less than 100 milliseconds, use that path, right? Let's say that's your policy. We actually come out of the box with certain recommended service level requirements on a per application basis. So we've characterized different applications, so we recommend what numbers should be dialed in. What that does is it creates those green tunnels. It starts the measurements on those tunnels, and it comes back with the path characteristics, and then it's able to pick the best path either on a direct-to-internet or on the overlay link. So all of this is included in the next version of PanOS. Now, let's go to topologies, right? So we talked about this mesh approach that is good for small deployments. You can still do it by manual configuration with our box. But really, the hub and spoke makes life easy. So we really recommend everybody to have a regional hub, bring everything back to that, and get high-quality links in the middle to make life easy. And part of the reason that we recommend that is it's what everybody ends up with anyway, right? So at the end of the day, most people end up with this kind of a topology. And Prisma Access is also built with exactly the same topology. So Prisma Access has its compute locations on 140 POPs around the world at these various countries. Now you can use Prisma Access as that SD-WAN hub, interconnect, security, and access to last mile, which is SaaS, public cloud, and all the different destinations. As an example, if let's say there's a branch office somewhere in Chile, and it's trying to do perhaps database access from Japan, right? It's a multinational company, and you're doing a backup, or you have data that needs to go across the globe, and you want to accelerate that traffic by introducing SD-WAN. So the traffic can come from the branch to the nearest POP on Prisma Access. We will terminate that tunnel on the closest Prisma Access compute. That's where the dynamic path selection and first mile is done. Then Prisma Access will carry this across the globe using the best path possible, a very performant fabric, all the way to Japan. And from Japan, there you have last mile connectivity on the service tunnels, and you can run SD-WAN there as well. And if this was SaaS, Prisma Access will also get it to the SaaS destination in the most performant fashion. So operationally, this is simple. You don't have to deal with hubs anymore. You don't have to deal with buying interconnect and paying for those. It actually can get operationally as well as bandwidth-wise expensive if you do this yourself, especially for a multinational company, as well as if you have many branches. So if you have, let's say, more than 50 branches, scale is the other aspect that most people get stuck in. And Prisma Access being a cloud product, it scales. So we've also solved that problem for you. There's a session tomorrow that we're going to deep dive into the Prisma Access guts and how it applies to SD-WAN. So I invite you to attend the second part of our SD-WAN in room 115, 11:30 tomorrow. Now, as far as addressing customer needs for this first version, these are all the questions that customers ponder when they think about SD-WAN, right? I want to get more bandwidth. and I want to use all the links that I have concurrently. I don't want to have this backup primary thing anymore. I want to have reliable connection for my VoIP, Office 365, my business critical applications, even homegrown applications that I want custom app decodes for, and I want to have a performant way to get to that destination. But I want to retain simplicity, and I don't want to reduce my security posture, right? So simplicity and security. And then for many of our customers, interconnect and scale is another aspect that they get to at the very, very end. Even after they bought a solution, they're like, wow, it doesn't scale. And now they have to go back and rethink the whole thing. So overall, if I was going to summarize the whole thing, we are talking about consistent security, same one you've been enjoying with Palo Alto all along. We are bringing it to your SD-WAN solution by integrating SD-WAN into the firewall, reducing the number of boxes. You get high performance end-to-end. This is a first, actually. Nobody has all the way end-to-end as a solution. You have to put the pieces in different places or go to a service provider to get an end-to-end solution. And it's about simplicity of consumption, being able to use Prisma Access with our boxes to get you the solution you want. All right, so this is the end of the presentation. I will open it up for questions, and I'll invite you to come on the stage. He's got a ticket also, so best questions get to win these tickets. Yes, sir. So the question was breaking through the Great Firewall of China. And there are actually solutions for that. Obviously, the solution has to abide by the regulatory limits that China has imposed. But yes, there's a solution for that. And as long as you're willing to do the paperwork, we can address the use case. All right. That wasn't a good question, though. Thank you. I'm kidding. More questions, please. Yes? Does it work for UDP? So does dynamic path change work for UDP? So yes, because when we actually do the path selection, we are doing out-of-band monitoring of those links, meaning that if you have LTE and you have cable, we can say that this cable link is not good. And if the application is, let's say, voice UDP, we can then say, you know, the link in general doesn't meet those metrics. So it really doesn't matter if it's TCP or UDP. We will move that session on an application basis over. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the MPLS connection just breaks. Does my session from the VoIP stream up or just break?
Yeah, I'll answer that, and if you want to add an answer.
So it will fail over to whatever your backup path is.
Yeah. But the routing needs to be such that both from source to the destination, you have you're able to preserve the session and NAT it right before it gets to your call manager.
That's cool, but there is an overlay between my cable and my MPLS through the same hub. And then my primary path is through my MPLS.
Yes.
For DSP reasons. And when my MPLS breaks,
Yes.
my user just
So I can share my experience in that area. The calls will actually, in some cases, you will.
Can you repeat the question? People
Yeah.
are not able
So the
to
question is, if you are routing voice in your network and your primary link is MPLS and you have a secondary link, whether it's a IPsec tunnel or something else, would your calls drop or will they stay alive and the session will fail over? So in my experience, the session fails over. We have seen all the way from no impact to the listener on the other side to maybe a second of silence, and then it continues. Does that answer you? Okay.
Thanks. So AWS AMIs or other VMs, is this supported in that so I can use this for backhaul to infrastructure as a service in AWS?
Great question. So this capability is available in our VMs. So you can set it up in your private workloads on the cloud as well and run your own tunnel termination points on public cloud as well. That's definitely one of the use cases for sure. I think I saw a few hands back there.
What's the licensing model going to be for it?
Perfect question. So the SD-WAN capability is licensed as a subscription on the hardware or VMs. We are planning to have a promotional period where people with ELAs can get the SD-WAN included for a period of time. So there's a window that the ELAs are a good, fantastic deal, but it's a subscription license. Great question.
Hi, everyone. So what's the limitation for the SD-WAN, WAN connectivity? Like how many WAN circuits we can have, like MPLS and SDL? Like, is there any limitation, or we can have maximum 2 or 3 or more?
So with PanOS 9.1, we have, as far as the total number of circuits that you can put into SD-WAN virtual interface, it's 10. 10, 11. So you can actually put physical as well as overlay tunnels in that SD-WAN virtual interface. We don't have a strict limit. Yes.
Okay. Hi, good evening. So I have 2 to 3 questions. So first off, with the SD-WAN boxes coming in, would we still be able to do active, passive with links coming on different boxes? That's the first question. The second question would be the new ZTP boxes, will they be coming in with inbuilt Wi-Fi? And my third question would be that since it's still connecting, the entire infrastructure is still connecting to Prisma Access, the mobile user use case wherein you have the mobile users also sharing the same fabric, will that still continue?
Okay, let me start with the last one. So Prisma Access and mobile users. So with Prisma Access, the goal is that we're going to connect all of the sources, so where the users are, either a mobile on laptop or a branch office, into the fabric to the destinations that they want to go to, and they can even talk to each other. So that's going to be the same, that works today, and it's going to continue to work into the future as well.
Awesome.
Your middle question was the ZTP boxes. So today, the ZTP boxes are the same boxes that we are shipping today. They are getting a software upgrade to work in the ZTP workflow. And we're not introducing new hardware or new capabilities with the ZTP, but we are working on new hardware to be announced in the future as well. But the ZTP is the existing hardware. And do you remember the first question?
The active, if you're running
in HA?
firewalls and active HA,
okay.
would you be able to run 2 links on different firewalls?
So HA is a little bit tricky topic in terms of how you want to connect the links together. Active passive is obviously the easiest way to do it. If you want to sandwich these boxes, I think we can talk about HA in more detail, perhaps after this meeting. But HA is a topic that, yes, we have it, it works. To optimize the HA architecture, there are additional steps that we can take to reduce the number of boxes that go into an HA solution. And I think I know what you're thinking, but we can talk about it after the session.
Okay, thank you so much.
There's one more question up here, and then I guess we actually have a little bit of time. Yeah, perfect. Awesome.
Question?
There's one back there and one up here.
Do you provide on-site support services for the firewalls on the branches?
One more time, please.
Do you provide on-site support services for the branches?
On-site support.
On-site support. So that's a service that our VARs and resellers or service providers support with our boxes. So when Prisma Access is sold or our boxes are sold, the managed service provider would be offering that service.
And it will be consistent for the SD-WAN feature as well.
Yep, exactly. And there was one more. You still have your question? Yeah, right here.
About the path monitoring, could we do it with HTTP GET request?
So the question is regarding path monitoring. What are the different capabilities of path monitoring? In 9.1, the path monitoring requires a bookended design where it's between two of our boxes. So it's between a branch and a branch, or a branch and a hub. And what you're asking is with HTTP GET, that's called single-sided monitoring, where you can test different websites. And that's a feature that we're going to introduce in a follow-on release. Great question. Please.
So you're saying your application recognition engine already is what you're using to classify and tag the traffic. Are you storing this information around quality experience for these applications as part of this app ID? So you can use it for other use cases in the future, or is it still distinct from your application recognition engine?
Today, what we are doing in 9.1 is we are using our app ID decode engine, our app cache, which has been extended, to recognize the different applications. And depending on what the service level requirement is, we just steer that traffic down the right path that matches the service level requirements. There are capabilities coming to actually measure on a per application basis what the quality is. But again, that's one of those future capabilities that we've thought about. We've actually took SD-WAN from concept commit to a product in less than a year, which is quite an achievement in itself. And then we're going to, with your help, as you deploy this and as you ask these questions, we're going to continue to improve it and make it the best SD-WAN and security product in the market. All right, so let's perhaps close up with that. I appreciate all the questions. And do you want to hand out your ticket?
I think I'll give it to the gentleman in the back who asked 3 questions.
OK, quantity. All right.